And this is the thing, is that through that process, I really got clear on the voice of Inkling. And it's the voice of Inkling that I'm chasing as I'm writing, right? And so I'm really clear on what that voice is as I'm, writing my books, and just following and following and following. And it has, for me, become the difference between the old way of hustling versus the new way of aligning, right?
Right.
And that was the real big lesson for me coming out of real estate coaching, because I was always coaching all of my agents and students to hustle,
Yeah.
go knock on more doors, go make more calls, go send out more letters, go, and that was like the old way. And we don't do that anymore. Instead, we teach alignment, which is to be still, to be calm, to read the energy of those who are in front of you and see what opportunity they might be bringing to you, knowing that you are completely in control of everything that you see. Because ultimately, the powerful mind has no one to blame other than yourself.
Welcome to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. I'm your host, Johnny Mango. This is the place where we inquire about lifestyle, culture, and careers. Weekly, we meet with new guests that make a contribution of their insightful stories about their careers and how those careers impact their lifestyle and culture. Hello, everybody. This is Johnny Mango, and today we are blessed with a visit from a very interesting person. His name is Dale Allen-Rowse, and Dale is a very interesting guy. He is an author. He's a former entertainer, former very successful real estate broker, and now a business coach. So, Dale, what I'd like to start with, if possible, and welcome, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get this varied background?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a big fan of your show, love what you're doing. And so it's really a great honor for me to be here with you today. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
So a little bit about my background. I'll just give you the quick version, then we can get into details in a bit. So I was raised in, your average 1970s, 1980s, traditional home. My father was a Baptist minister. My mom was a substitute school teacher. And I was just this little piece of weirdness that they were given that they didn't quite know what to do with. So I actually really started to try to leave home, which is very much detailed in my books, to the point of pretty much escaping my parents because that environment was not a safe place for me. And that really was the beginning of my blessings. And it's so much of what my message is about, that often the worst things that happen to us are, in fact, what was either needed or appropriate in order for our soul's learning. So leaving my parents' home, essentially escaping, and I ran away. Instead of going to the circus, I ran away to a ballet company. And I joined the ballet troupe, and we toured all over the world. And I had a really great time as a late teen, early 20s doing that. Moving on, I kept getting more and more, roles and success. And I was on Broadway and did a bunch of ballet companies and was a backup dancer for Celine Dion for many years. But once that was kind of done, and I knew that performing with Celine in Vegas was kind of my final performing gig, I was kind of artistically satisfied. I'm like, okay, let's go make some money. I went and got my real estate license, and thus started a whole new path forward for me, where I very quickly was working under a developer in Las Vegas. And during that time in the early 2000s, it really was the boom. So I rode, that rocket for a while as we were, flying into space because it was such a crazy time in Vegas, in the development world, all of that. But we all know how that ended. Right? Everything imploded in 2000, and I left Las Vegas with basically the shirt on my back. From there, I went and got a degree in graphic design, and I had already been sewing and quilting as a performer just because we'd be on tour for a long time, and you'd have to have something to do on the tour bus. And so hand sewing was kind of my thing. This was obviously before personal handheld computers of any sort. So that's kind of where I got my, design and sewing background. I created a small side business called Quilting Cowboy. I am working on my 4th fabric line now. which I'm presenting on Friday. I have dozens of patterns that I've produced. Like I said, several lines of fabrics and everything else like that. But about 5 years ago, I just kind of realized that it was a lot of work and just the reward wasn't quite there. Like you have to sell a lot of $10 patterns in order for it to really, do anything. But I was still, a real estate agent and doing all of that. Once I graduated with my degree in graphic design, I moved to Los Angeles, where I was hired as the director of education for Keller Williams. And so I kind of moved from working for a developer to working for brokerage firms. That's what started my business coaching part of my life, which I found I really enjoyed. Having a background in entertainment, I found that being in the front of a class as a teacher was a natural fit for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm a natural cheerleader. So, I had great success in all of that, built a really big business. I was fourth out of 450 agents, plus I was teaching all the agents. I was doing all the things that you're supposed to do in order to, quote unquote, achieve success in North America. And then I got sick. And then I developed, which is very, very odd, I developed the same neurological movement disorder as Celine Dion. It's just weird that I worked with her. Picked her up on stage every night for all those years, and she's the only other person that I know in the world who has it. Anyhow, thus started a whole new path forward that had me recovering from my very big successful life and trying to find answers. And that's when I started writing, actually. Not that I needed another hobby, but I was really trying to save my life through writing these books. And it was a process that allowed me to really go step by step and unpack my entire mind to really understand what was there, to understand the trauma, to understand any limiting beliefs, and all of these things that I then started using in my new study, which was energy work, because I felt like Western medicine really didn't have any answers for me. And it was the only thing I found that was really empowering me in order to have all the tools and controls of my own life. And so studying energy work and then writing all these books on energy work and how that works is really what has landed me where I am today, which is an interesting cross-section of business coaching and spirit work.
Wow.
So now you're all caught up.
I think I got lost in Celine Dion.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wow. Okay. Well, listen, that's very interesting. And so you had that similar disease. Doesn't that cause your muscles to tighten or something that you can't move?
Exactly. So whereas it's kind of in the same family as tics, but whereas tics are fast, dystonia is, or it's called stiff person syndrome is the layman's term. It causes you to cramp, right? Whereas, like I said, the tics happen fast in the movement, but dystonia is very slow and cramping to the point where you feel like your body is just made out of rock. Like it's very hard to move.
So how did you get through that? Medically. I mean, medically. Did they treat you with something or?
They treated me with a whole bunch of things, all of which were making things worse. And that's where I actually kind of became a bit angry with Western medicine. I'm like, one of the side effects of one of the medications they had me on was a movement disorder. And when I found that out, I was like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. I am done. You are not like putting any of that in me anymore. And we sold everything and we moved to the middle of the woods and we just disconnected from all of society. And I just really started I don't watch the news. I don't participate in mainstream craziness. Like it was really just this path forward of me healing myself every day and working through hours of meditation to really understand who and what I am. Because if dystonic movement or dystonia means out of alignment, then that was kind of my first clue. Like that was the first thread I started to tug on. Like if I'm out of alignment, like what would it mean for me to get back into alignment? What does that look like? And who's responsible for that? Well, I am.
Yeah.
And it was just this path of continually moving myself forward in self empowerment and in health and visualizing and seeing my neuro pathways forward that were going to get me back into alignment. And the books, like I said, really helped me through that process.
It's something I'm learning through my podcasting is that how stress affects our health. I'm learning that from talking to a number of people as I progress through this, just like you brought it up, once you found a place to kind of calm down, for any better word, or de-stress, you move moved to the middle of nowhere or someplace and just kind of started to come back. I'm hearing that from a number of different people in different ways. I'm kind of fascinated by that. But let's talk a little bit about your books. And you want to talk about the Language and Light series, or would you like to talk about something else?
Sure. Well, the Language and Light series is a fun little series of novelettes. They're all about 100 pages or less. They're a fun read that's meant to be, like take it on a plane. You can read the entire book on a plane, And so it's just episodic, and it's a fun series of, well, obviously, like me, part of my story and leaving and escaping my parents' home was to avoid conversion therapy, which I was being threatened with, right? And so, like, that whole trauma, that whole messaging of, like, I have to be institutionalized, as a young person really affected me. And so you find that type of messaging coming up over and over in my books. So what I found really interesting about the books is that the whole thing started in 1886, which is when Nikolai Tesla, yes, that Tesla, of the scientist. And so the books are a little bit historical fiction in that you actually start in 1886, which is the year that Nikolai Tesla left pre-Nazi Austria for America. However, he leaves behind this secret lover who is part werewolf, who then has to deal with all of the things that are starting to fall apart, because 1886 was the first year that conversion therapy was ever coined as a term. And so I'm following these parallel tracks of the evolution of conversion therapy starting in 1886, and how Nikolai Tesla and anybody left behind in pre-Nazi Austria would have been affected by those two things. And so it becomes this like almost hurricane of activity, because suddenly the people left behind are running madly trying to save these young men from being lobotomized, which is what they did back then.
Wow. I didn't know it went back that far. That's interesting. Well, what about the journey of the Dark Shaman Trilogy? Yeah. Let's talk about that. I really like to learn a little bit more about shamanism from you.
Sure. So the Journey of a Dark Shaman Trilogy is really my life story. And even though it's my life story put on a fictional character who's bisexual and like has all these relationships with women as he does with men, and so it's a fictional character, but it's still my story. It's still like told from my point of view, even though, because I kind of felt like if I was going to write my story, I didn't like, unless you're Anne Frank, nobody really cares. Like we all kind of go through the same life series of events, and, it's not necessarily special unless it is. And so I wanted my character to exist in this kind of more special, more magical, unreal world, and have access to that, rather than Dale did this and then Dale went to ballet school, and like who cares, right? So I wanted it to be a little bit more magical, and I wanted it to have access to the off-grid, right, which is spaces and places that I use and visit and go to and know about through my work as a shamanic practitioner, which is studying to be a shaman.
So let's talk about shamanism for a few minutes. Tell me what you've learned, because obviously you didn't grow up with that.
No.
So
well, I kind of did. So my family growing up was divided into two sections. There was the indigenous nations family, right? There was that part of the family that lived on a reservation that we as good Christians never talked about or wanted to know about, right? They were completely ostracized. They were seen as drunkards. They were seen as derelicts. They were seen as unchristian, which is the worst thing of all.
That's right. That Baptist.
Right. And so I was in the camp with the good Christians, and all of my other relatives were indigenous, First Nations Canadian living on a reservation. And so there was this real split, and that really comes into like showing me the difference. And this is what I really have learned through this entire process is this. Traditional religion is based on abuse. You obey me, and if you don't obey me, you will be punished. That is the traditional model for religion. Shamanism, however, gives you access to completely jailbreak the matrix. It shows you how to be more powerful. And once you have sat with and experienced and understood powerful people in the world who aren't bowing down to praise some god, but rather stepping into their own holiness to jailbreak the entire thing. This is what I like. There was a wildfire that was going on locally, and they brought in the local shaman to deal with the wildfire. And when a shaman is involved in order to affect the external, they go internal and they find the thing within themselves that is off. And once they find the thing within themselves that is off, then the fire goes out. And when you see that type of power, where you see people manifesting on a Jesus Christ level with like no problem. My teacher, in fact, like blows my mind on a regular basis because he is actually manifesting in real time things that are happening to him and for him. He is in control of that. He's not waiting for God to do something. No, he is God. He is the God of his entire universe, and he is a very powerful being. And that's what I'm interested in knowing and teaching and talking about. Not this other where you have to bow down, and if you don't do it right, you get punished. That is the old way.
You know, back in my career, I spent time with the Navajo and Hopi tribes in Arizona, and I kind of get what you're talking about, that inward, that they're less bothered by the outward world and more into there's an inner world that I've learned about working with them. And that's what you're describing to me, this kind of...
And that's just it. And it's an entire channel of communication with our surroundings that Western people are unaware of because they have never spent the time to tap in to understand everything that's happening around them. It's like animal tracking. I know that's super random, but when you go and study animal tracking with shamans, right, everything starts from stillness and quiet. And from there, they have access to jailbreak and understand everything around them. And once you start to tap into that much information that most people are completely deaf and blind to, then you become like you have superpowers almost. And I see it again with my teacher all the time, how he taps into source and directs everything that's happening to him from himself. He doesn't need a God. Again, he is God. He is the God of his own experience. And that's what we're trying to get to develop really powerful people, not people who are looking to prostrate themselves before some, non-existent deity.
Right. I find that very interesting because I in my work with especially the Navajo people, I once asked them, why do you build your hogans, the houses you live in, with the door facing the east? And it was all about astrology. It was all about how the stars line up and how they do it at night when the stars are out there, and they can do the whole thing, which is kind of beyond. They aren't architects,
right?
But architecturally, they figured it out based on some other element. And I do see where the shaman practice conflicts with the traditional practice of people in today's world.
Correct. Because the shaman's way is all access from one place. And it's one place most people in the Western world know nothing about.
Yeah.
And that's called stillness.
Right.
A still mind, a still experience, a still way of walking through the world so that you can start to affect everything that's happening around you, not everything around you affecting you. And that's why most people in the Western world are so terrorized, and they deal with stress and anxiety, and they feel out of control because they are, and they keep looking to some God in the sky to do the thing, completely unaware that they in and of themselves can go do it. They don't need a middleman. They don't need to be praying to somebody. They can internally access all the power that we can leverage through energy work and personal power.
Right. Right. So are you studying that? Are you, obviously you're practicing, but are you still studying? Are you sharing this with others? Where's that in your life?
So I, do spend several hours a day still in meditation and working through this system. Again, the books really take my essential learning in the space of meditation and off-grid places and puts it into a more concrete place for me to understand from. I channel my books. I don't write them. I completely blank my mind and then kind of just take notes. And my keyboard becomes like a Ouija board. And as the information is coming out on the page, I continually learn from it. And that's why I say I channel it, because I'm writing books on topics I know nothing about.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But it's so fascinating because I am learning from it, right? And that's really what started to first attach me to shamanism, because And this is the thing, is that through that process, I really got clear on the voice of inkling. And it's the voice of inkling that I'm chasing as I'm writing, right? And so I'm really clear on what that voice is as I'm, writing my books, and just following and following and following. And it has, for me, become the difference between the old way of hustling versus the new way of aligning, right?
Right.
And that was the real big lesson for me coming out of real estate coaching, because I was always coaching all of my agents and students to like hustle, hustle, hustle,
Yeah.
go knock on more doors, go make more calls, go send out more letters, go, 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 and that was like the old way. And we don't do that anymore. Instead, we teach alignment, which is to be still, to be calm, to read the energy of those who are in front of you and see what opportunity they might be bringing to you, knowing that you are completely in control of everything that you see. Because ultimately, the powerful mind has no one to blame other than yourself. If you step into your own personal power, understanding that you, as the projector of your mind, are casting every single thing that you see, once you become responsible for that in a place of non-judgment, then your life really starts to kick into a higher gear that allows you to start to align with others more quickly, because you understand the resonance when it shows up,
Right. Wow. Okay. So shamanism. I wonder if Jesus was a shaman.
I mean, probably. Shaman is just a, kind of generic term for those who deal in and study energy work, which could be expressed in a myriad of ways. Everything from, like we talked about, animal tracking, to ancient songs, drumming, and rattles, to like channeling that I do, to tarot card, to like, there's just so many different ways to experience it.
I wonder if the apostles got it wrong. Huh? I'll get in trouble with that one.
We have some thoughts written down by some people, but,
I mean, I don't know. And, it is easy to elevate individuals on pedestals, and so it'd be interesting. Someday maybe we'll all understand all this. Well, let's move on. You're obviously into spirituality, and that seems to be the basis of your whole process, really, is taking that spirituality inward, not outward. Maybe that's the best way I could describe it, listening to you. This is the one thing I've always been interested in. I like your perspective on it. Where do hate fall in and out of spirituality?
Yeah. So in my spirit world, we do not teach good and evil. We only teach good. So evil does not exist. So evil would be considered an aberration. However, in most traditional religions, both good and evil is taught. So therefore, evil exists in their circles. So in the circles where I exist in spirit, again, evil is considered an aberration. It is not normal. It is not talked about. It is not like ever brought up, because to use dense words like that is considered to be like a wound against themselves. So they would never speak about opinion. They would never speak about what they hate. They would never speak about evil. So these things do not exist.
Because, I'm seeing in our world, in our culture, a lot of hate, manifesting itself in all kinds of different ways. Politically, physical violence, all kind. There's a list a mile long of different things. I'm starting to think, I like your thoughts on this. I'm starting to think that this is where what you just described is really the karmic solution to things. That instead of we'll call it fighting back, I'll get you because you got me. It's more of, I'm going to let this go by because it's me and I know who I am, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes more of a way of owning oneself, which is all based in a tradition of the indigenous people that I don't see in the Western world, called self-honor. Self-honor is where it all exists. And you're either like dealing with yourself and your vibe and your personal expression at all times, and monitoring that and being very clear about, are you adding to the global chaos or are you adding to the global love? Because the mind will attach to one of two things. It will either live in service to its own righteousness, or it will live in service to love. Those are your two options. And so when you see all this hate, that's everyone living in service to their own personal righteousness and what they think is good and bad. But, truth is just another word for personal experience. Like, my truth may not be your truth. And yet we all hold this ideal of truth as some kind of gold standard that nobody can really identify what it means.
Well, it's because it's all within us and not within them.
Yeah, it's a personal judgment call.
Right. Interesting. Well, I really appreciate your perspective on this. And so let's talk about your coaching career. Let's talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So right now I work in sustainability. Obviously, being in Southern California, the laws in building and construction are all moving in that direction. And so I'm kind of trying to help that. And then plus, obviously, with the recent fires, there's just a lot to be done on the ground right now to help move that in the right direction. I'm working for a company that's trying to really change the way that we live, the way that we work, the way that we do everything by creating small sustainable cities that are about 2 to 1,800 acres. And it has everything from schools, retail, emergency service, but it's all kind of like the sustainable city that they have in Dubai, right? Where it's all kind of enclosed, and it's trying to be as circular as possible. So there's no waste, nothing comes in and nothing leaves the community. It's all being either reused or handled in a way that's, for the best of the planet.
Interesting. I lived in the state of Vermont for about 5 years, and I'm from LA originally.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know both worlds. And they are different worlds. And what I found interesting about Vermont was that you have these little tiny, small little communities with a post office, a convenience store, and you might have a doctor there, you might have somebody else, and it's this little community. And you drive 5 miles down the road, there's another little community and another little community. It's a bunch of little communities. So you're looking at doing something that's maybe a little more vertical, a little more self-sustaining, I would think. I think the Chinese do that too, don't they?
Yeah, there's certainly examples of that as well. And we're, taking all of the models that have been put out there thus far, including looking at areas that are blue zones and trying to create that internally, really looking at dealing with social issues like loneliness, looking at first-time home buyers, right? And allowing people to come in with no down payment and just rent to own. And you just rent it until it's yours, right? Essentially no down payment. It's just, and so we're trying to come up with really creative ways to help all people within our community, from the, first-time home buyer to people who are wanting to maybe move in and live next to their kids.
I would think that if you have a community that is, I keep thinking vertical, and I may have this wrong, but a small community like that is built on a variety of social stratas, a variety of incomes, a variety of investment, and then it could really possibly make it affordable for those people who are just getting in at the ground level.
Right. And it's to support them as well.
Working their way up to the penthouse.
Yeah, exactly.
But, that because I know I see my own children in their 20s, and I see them struggle to buy a home and to do some things. So I have a little bit of understanding. I have a small background in real estate too, so I get that. Interesting that you're working on it. What about coaching? Are you still doing coaching?
Yeah, I am. So I have 2 different types of coaching. I have my traditional real estate coaching, but what's kind of becoming more popular is actually my spirit coaching, which is more like life coaching, right? Where I'm really taking everything that I learned from being a business coach and incorporating it into personal power and showing people how to really manifest in real time everything that they want. You can study manifesting in the same way that you can study any science. And it's now, I mean, if you watch any of my videos, I walk you through step by step how to clearly, and by the way, my podcast is called Spiritual Disco. It's super fun.
Yeah. I saw one you had a little yellow, a yellow outfit on. That's the one I saw.
But I'm so fascinated by it, right? And it's just understanding quantum physics and understanding the, give and take of the universe and what you're doing and how to affect your future. Like, most people don't even know where they are in time and space. And so when I start coaching with somebody, that's the first thing we address is like, where are you? And trying to get them out of the past and out of the future and get them to only live in the conscious present moment. Because in the conscious present moment, that's where all the levers and controls are to your future. And it's understanding how you language a thing, how you understand a thing, how you take the thing out of your mind, which is one plane of existence, and bring it into another, which is the physical realm. And what is the bridge from one to the other in order to make it more concrete in the physical world and actually make it, like, bring it about?
Right. Wow. One of the things I've always wondered about is how long is the moment? We have the past, we have the future, but how long is the present?
Yeah, it's just that, needle on the record.
Yeah, that's it. Wow. Okay. Well, how do people get in touch with you?
Sure. You can go to my website, DaleAllen-Rowse.com. Anywhere on social media, I'm at Dale Allen-Rowse. Luckily, I have a unique spelling to my name, so it's very easy to get all the handles to be the same.
And now, do you use that hyphen?
No.
Allen-Rowse? No.
No
Okay.
hyphen. So just all one word, Dale Allen-Rowse on Instagram, YouTube. So
and Rowse is spelled R-O-W-S-E, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, Dale, I really appreciate the time you took with us today, and hopefully that we all learned something from your life, because is very interesting, and it goes to show how people can transition from one thing to another in this life and not just allow themselves to be stuck physically, stuck mentally, stuck psychologically,
right?
But can move forward. And
right.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
You have been listening to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. Subscribe to hear a new and unique guest each week as they comment on their life's journey and share experiences with lifestyle, culture, and career. You can always find us at minuteswithmango.com.